Off top.
Starfish can never die of old age.
Play the music.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.
All right, welcome to the Domonique Foxworth Show, presented by Allstate Good Hands. I love the Allstate Good Hands.
Best.
Did I tell you my son was disappointed when we were watching college this weekend because he misses the Allstate ads where the hands in the background catching the field goal on uprights?
It's so pure.
You know you're rich when your children have insurance brands they're particularly fond of.
It's not I'm sure he loves the brand also because it's a great brand. But it was the idea that there were hands there to catch the field goal. He thought that bit of advertising was kind of thoughtful, and whatever game we were watching didn't have that. But anyway, Starfish can't die. We'll get back to that at some later point. But we got lots of great football to talk about because it was week 1 of the NFL. It was all
football.
there. It was all great. Charlie was very, very happy all day. We watched most of the games together. We had pizza and chicken wings. It was so red-blooded American, I couldn't take it.
Domonique lost it for a moment. I sat down, we had pizza and wings, and I go, pizza and wings rule.
Yeah, I was like, what? If that wasn't the most red-blooded American white man thing you've ever said in your life, like I felt like I was at a frat party.
Counterpoint, spot the lie.
I didn't disagree with you, but who has to say that? Who on Football Sunday, who has to say, you know what? Pizza and wings rule.
This is said by someone with a fast metabolism who has not had to restrict pizza and wing eating from his life for significant portions of time. It's September 10th. I had a piece of pizza. It ruled.
We are not going to spend the day talking about food when we got great football to talk about instead. Pizza and wings were good, though. All right, so what of this weekend? I'll start with you, Mr. Barnwell.
Oh, hi, I'm Bill Barnwell.
Oh, I never introduced you.
No, you didn't. You guys had to really focus on the pizza and wings. Are they good? Should we talk about it? Really had to hit that B hard before you could bring in your guest who's here in the middle of a night where I'll be writing till 5 in the morning. Thank you very much.
Oh, my gosh.
We're the worst.
The great Bill Barnwell, who is sacrificing some of his writing time to be here with us. We love you, Bill. I'm very sorry. I appreciate you being here, and that is why I want you to go first, because I love you so much, and I'm so grateful for you attending this fine soiree. What was the most impressive thing of the weekend, the NFL weekend, for you, sir?
Not the pizza and wings, because no one sent any up to Boston, but I'll start with something I was hoping to see in week 1 and got to see in full-blown color. Cleveland Browns defense got going, shut down Joe Burrow in the Battle of Ohio, held him to 3 points. I think the worst start of Joe Burrow's career. Just a wildly impressive performance from Jim Schwartz's defense.
Ohio football is it's like the birthplace of the NFL, right? Like if you go all the way back to the beginning of all the, I know that's where the Hall of Fame is, but whenever I see those two teams play, I think about like those old Ohio games, even though that none of these athletes in there are anywhere close to as poor as the athletes were back then. But I was excited to see the defense play up to the potential and the names on that defense. This is one of those defenses that kind of, I don't know, with Myles Garrett, especially, like Myles Garrett, I feel like doesn't get the credit he deserves because I think he's up there with guys like Aaron Donald and up there with Micah Parsons as far as his impact on the game. But we don't really get to celebrate it that often because the Browns aren't very good. And I know entering the season, we all thought if Deshaun Watson is mediocre, the Browns will be great. Apparently, he don't even got to be mediocre. He wasn't very good at this game, and the Browns were outstanding because they confused Joe Burrow. I rewatched that game from the coach's angle and saw a couple of things that I was really impressed with. They're a well-coached team that disguised the hell out of their blitzes, dropped into some shockingly confusing zones that confused Joe Burrow while showing a bunch of pressure. And then when they weren't showing pressure or sending a blitz, Micah Parsons just kind of collapsed their line. Micah Parsons and the rest of the D-line. So, yeah, it was a fun watch for anyone who is not a fan of Cincinnati. But who cares? Joe Burrow can't lose this weekend. He just made like $1 trillion.
I mean, yes, Joe Burrow made a lot of money. He had a cool suit for the game. He's going to be fine. But this was a really impressive performance because you saw the Browns really, like you said, they confused Joe Burrow. I don't know if they gave the other teams a blueprint, but they did put a lot of faith in their cornerbacks. They played a lot of single high safeties, played a lot of their cornerbacks and safeties on an island. I mean, there were plays here where you had Grant Delpit, one of their starting safeties, one-on-one on a slot fade against T. Higgins, who's one of the best receivers in all of football. So I don't know, Domonique, do you feel like, having watched how they played in this game, how they were mixing up, disguising their coverages, how they, were willing to put their corners on an island, do you think they just got away with it and other teams can't copy it? Or do you think other teams should try and do this the same way the Browns did?
It really helps to have Myles Garrett. I think when you can ensure that Myles Garrett is on the field, it allows you to do a couple of things. So, like, of course, you're going to get pressure from Myles Garrett, but it also allows you to know which way they're going to slide the line. So when they were blitzing, they often blitzed away from Myles Garrett. At this old age in my rickety body, I could hold up for a second and a half if I know that the blitz is going to come clean the opposite side and I know that Myles Garrett is going to get there. So there were situations where the corners did have to cover for extended periods of time, and being isolated on Jamar Chase is terrifying no matter what. So they did do it in certain situations, but it also, it felt real good. I imagine it feels real good to cover Jamar Chase and T. Higgins while Joe Burrow is running for his life back there. You feel like your coverage is really damn good when Joe Burrow can't get a clean look down the field.
And you saw in this game, they did move Myles Garrett around. There were a couple snaps on third down where he was starting over the center, which is, people go up against guards sometimes, so you move edge rushers around. But I felt like they really tried to do some more unique stuff with Myles Garrett to get him good one-on-one matchups, and that's something I think the Browns are going to do week in, week out. And maybe we'll see some teams move their best pass rusher over the center and try to, hurry the Bengals that way.
Yeah, and Zadarius Smith added to that front is impactful too. Look like you got something to say.
Well, yeah, Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith hit Joe Burrow 8 times. They held the Bengals to 2.6 yards per play. And worth noting that people do think this is for real, because the AFC North division odds shifted after this game, with the Browns as plus 200 favorites, tied with the Ravens to win the AFC North, and the Bengals at plus 245 in the 3 spot.
I mean, this went about as well as it could have for the Browns this weekend. The Ravens, they looked okay, not great, and pretty much 4 of their top players got injured at one point or another during that game. The Steelers, we're going to get to the Steelers in another segment on this show. And the Bengals lost. So, this was the dream weekend if you're someone who, I don't want to name names, but maybe predicted before the year that the Browns are going to win the AFC North.
We'll get to that too. We'll give you the Bill victory lap after week 1 segment, because that won't hold up well, I'm sure. That'll come back to bite you at some point. But yeah, you mentioned the Ravens. I did not love the way the Ravens look. They were one of the teams I was most excited about. The Todd Monken offense, all these great receivers, Lamar Jackson being able to spread it out, and then he was just dropping the ball. The interception that he threw was very disappointing, and it was very un-Lamar like. So they got the win in part because they were playing the Houston Texans, who are not very good right now. They're very young. They're in a rebuild mode. So the Ravens got the win, but they lost key players, including was Marcus Williams, their safety.
Marcus Williams.
Yeah, and they lost J.K. Dobbins, the running back.
Yeah. Ronnie Stanley, left tackle, went down injured. Tyler Lindenbaum, another starting offensive lineman, went down injured. Even though they won this game, it felt like this was, same old Ravens. They're going to lose 4 key players before September's out.
They lost, I don't know if they would have rather lose the game and keep the players. Ronnie Stanley, it's so sad. He was great, and then he just hasn't been able to get back on the field long enough to be the all-pro level left tackle that he once was. The same thing with the Ravens running backs. It feels like the Ravens running backs and corners are always hurting, and the secondary always injured. I don't know what it is about that situation, but it was disappointing for them. And then, the real key was I wanted to see how good Lamar Jackson was going to be in this offense, and he was not good. That hurt me. That hurt me because I was excited about it. Zay Flowers stood out as a special player, which I was expecting. That was nice to see. Yeah. Since we're doing victory laps, told you.
Yeah, worth noting, Lamar Jackson, 2.8 ADOT in the first half under Todd Monken. Not great, considering we were hoping that he was going to take a big step forward, not being in Greg Roman's offense. So I have a question before we pivot off the AFC North. Bill, how real do you think this struggle was for Joe Burrow and the Bengals?
I mean, there's a lot of things, right? Part of it was weather. Part of it was the Browns, I think, being better on defense that people gave them credit for. A lot of it was the game coming down to 6 or 7 plays where the middle of the field was occupied and they get to hit fades to their star receivers, which usually work out, and they didn't work out. But this is not the first year they've gotten off to a slow start. This is not the first year they've gotten into September and it's been a slog. Like, this is a team that in 2021, in 2022, they have been incredible after the bye, incredible into the second half of that season and into the postseason, but they've been mediocre in September and mediocre even into October. So I think, at least in the short term, this is a real thing. This is a team that consistently has not gotten off to good starts with this core of players.
And I mean, I think it also speaks to Joe Burrow also never completing a training camp fully healthy. So that probably has something to do with it. If your quarterback is always injured in training camp, you can't get up to the speed that you want to. But we don't want to spend any more time on them because I think we all believe they aren't Chiefs level faith, but I don't think any of us think that the Bengals are done. You know, like the Chiefs lost, but we're not off of the Chiefs, and I'm not off of the Bengals just yet.
Can I give my most impressive, or are you just going to go through all of them?
Oh, no, I was going to tell you who I thought was impressive. My bad.
The one I want to give, the 49ers offense, and in particular, enemy of the nerds, Brock Purdy. Because there are a million playmakers on the 49ers offense, and they get all of the credit. Kyle Shanahan gets all the credit. Now, all I heard the entire offseason was that the cult of Brock Purdy was fake, and he was going to regress, and we're going to have the 4-interception game, and he's not going to be that good. And anyone can play quarterback in this. Can't wait for Sam Darnold to be starting by week 6. You know what my guy did? You know what BCP did? He just walked out there and dominated in the first half against a Steelers team that people thought was going to win 9 games, playoff sleeper, distributed the ball, got the ball to Ayuk. McCaffrey was awesome. And the question coming into the season for the 49ers was, how good can a team be if your ceiling is capped by Brock Purdy? Are we sure that their ceiling is capped by Brock Purdy? And that's why he's my most impressive person for week 1.
I feel like this is, I mean, you said nerds like 3 times. So, I mean.
It's a shot at both of you. You're a nerd too.
I mean, of the people that are here, the king of the nerds is Bill Barnwell. So I feel like you need to defend yourself.
There's 2 people on the planet who think that Brock Purdy had haters and was being disparaged this offseason. And it's Brock Purdy, who said as much in his post-game press conference, and apparently Charlie Kravitz are the only 2 people who think Brock Purdy was just getting lambasted. I'll tell you what, I'm going to raise my hand right now. I don't want to see Sam Darnold. I've seen enough Sam Darnold for my life. Yeah. I've wasted enough of my time arguing about Sam Darnold, watching Sam Darnold tape, listening to people who say, oh, Sam's just got to get the situation right. I'm through. If he's good, great. I don't care. I'm over it. I want to see Brock Purdy for 17 games. But I, as much as Brock Purdy played well in this game, I think this was a nightmare matchup. And to me, I feel like it told us more about how bad the Steelers are, or the Steelers might be, than it did about how good the Niners are.
Yeah, it was really disappointing. The Steelers, they have the playmakers that, I think they believe that their playmakers are on the level of the 49ers, or at least close, but they aren't. Because they attacked each other's defenses in similar ways, because they both have really aggressive and dominant front seven. So you want to get the ball out quickly to avoid giving time to get pressured. And it seemed like when the 49ers did it, their playmakers did something with it, or they were schemed up into situations where they were more open. And when the Steelers did it, there were turnovers. There was Pickett throwing an atrocious interception on the sideline. Those problems were there. And so there is a difference between Purdy and Pickett. If that's what you want, and you want me to capitulate?
Hand size.
There you go. Yeah, you love picking on poor Pickett's hand size.
Purdy gets the ball out quickly. Pickett holds the ball longer than just about every other NFL quarterback, and held the ball longer than just about every other NCAA quarterback in his final season at school. Like, that is the biggest difference between these guys to me. And you saw, like, as this game went on, Pickett's ball placement was terrible. Like there were times where, like, you know, stuff wasn't getting schemed up maybe the way you wanted, but there were times in this game where he had open receivers and just flat out missed throws. And whether that was him seeing ghosts or not feeling confident or making bad decisions or getting desperate, like, he just missed a number of big throws in this game. And that's not promising for the Steelers and for people expecting this big second-year breakout from Kenny Pickett.
It's really discouraging, but I feel like we've gone too far into this podcast without talking about the show without talking about the Cowboys defense. And to be fair, we're taping this at halftime of the Sunday night game. To be transparent with everyone who's watching us right now, we're taping this at a halftime.
You know what's happening.
We already know what's happening because it was happening so uglily in the first half, where they were just pressuring them. We made the observation, we were watching the game a few minutes ago, that it seemed like the Giants had their first 10 plays scripted, and they worked. Then they got a field goal blocked, and then they were like, we ain't got shit else. Oh, we're done. And then they were doing quarterback sweeps, which I know Daniel Jones is an athlete, but that Cowboys defense is so fast. Tip balls. Trayvon Diggs is hitting people in the back, causing interceptions. I guess Hooker took an interception, would-be interception in the chest. It just, it looks like a early season game in college where you got to schedule win because that's your preseason. You're playing against a directional school.
The Cowboys are going to give the Giants $1.5 million after this game for being nice enough to show up. I mean, these felt very similar to me. The Giants lost, which we're halfway through, and the Steelers lost. It was the balloon bursting. It was everything that people had convinced themselves about these teams being true, being obviously exposed by much better football teams in the course of a half of football. Like you can't, like the Steelers and the Giants were the two preseason darlings on offense. Like these were the two offenses that where they looked so good. There's only a handful of staffs, but people had convinced themselves they were just going to ball out this year, and they were embarrassingly bad. They were no dimensional, let alone one dimensional by the end of the first half of these games. And so, like, I feel like we need to keep this in mind. If we're going to be nerds, if I'm going to be called a nerd, let me give you this piece of nerd advice. Stop pretending the preseason means anything when it comes to evaluating offenses. I can't believe I wasted a month of my life getting yelled at by Giants and Steelers fans. We're done. Move on. These offenses, they might be good, but they did not look good in week one.
It also reminds me that, like, I think we get infatuated in football with coaches, and I'm guilty of this also because you see really impressive schemes. You see guys put together an offense that works around a player's skill set, and you get excited. And it's saying, I think we could throw Mike Tomlin in this category too. You see him overachieve year after year with rosters that aren't good enough, and you're like, hey, they're going to lift this up. We're going to see what happens when they get a little more talent. And you say we got McCarthy versus Dayball. You know who's going to win that? Dayball. He's the one who's the quarterback whisperer. You know what? The guys on one side a lot better than the guys on the other side.
Say the cliche.
What cliche?
It's about the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's.
Oh, that cliche. That's not a cliche. That's
facts.
Yeah, that's not a cliche. That's just a fact of life. A law of physics is that Jimmys and Joes are better than X's and O's. And I think Trayvon's and Micah's are better than Jimmy's and Joe's for sure. Oh, yeah. Stephon's are a problem for Jimmy's and Joe's and X's and O's. So that's what it comes down to.
So not having seen the second half of the Giants game, and assuming they don't come back and win this game, in which case we probably have to tape this over.
It's 33-0 now, by the way. The Cowboys scored again.
It's getting worse. Which of these two teams, the Giants and the Steelers, do you have more faith making like a trip back to where expectations were before this week? Any faith in either of them?
No, but I think you have to go with the conference, right? You have to go with the NFC and say that the Giants have a better shot because the AFC is just loaded. Like, we haven't even gotten to talking about the Dolphins and other AFC teams that were a problem. But if I'm going to pick a team of those two that has a chance of bouncing back, it's got to be the Giants. They get to play Washington twice. Charlie's Washington Commanders twice this year.
They won,
but it was not pretty. It was not pretty.
It's got to be like the most dejecting loss possible, or win possible, right? A team that's actively trying to lose as many games as possible to get Caleb Williams, and
you give up 7 sacks in the first half.
Well, and like, you talk about buying into preseason hype. I convinced myself that Sam Howell might be decent.
Me too.
And then I see him play against that Cardinals defense, and I'm like, oh my God.
I convinced myself that Sam Howell and I think Eric Bieniemy's coming in. That's me buying into coaching again. Get out of here. Give me a Jimmy and a Joe.
But by the way, the Giants have 12 passing yards.
Congratulations, more than I expected.
Did Micah take a couple snaps off, or what? Like, did they just roll out a carpet? It is
the final series of halftime. They had a bunch of starters on the sideline. Michael Parsons was holding his helmet under his arm because they were already rested before halftime. It was absurd. Oh gosh. Well, I think the Cowboys are for real.
Yeah,
we learned that.
Oh yeah. No, the Cowboys are good, as it turns out. They're a lot better than the Giants like they were last year.
We've gotten away from the artifice of the question, so it's fine with me. But how impressed were you with the Packers, Bill. Did you get a good look at the Packers game? Because I mean, I think that was one of the teams. So as much as you clown the people who buy into preseason hype, the Packers were one of the teams, and Jordan Love specifically was one of the players whose preseason hype got the team pretty high, and we were all believing in that team, and they looked like they lived up to it in that whooping they handed to the Chicago Bears.
I mean, I like the Packers. I picked the Packers to win the NFC North, unrelated to preseason content, just based on vibes. But I will say that felt like a game where the Bears were the problem more than the Packers were the solution. Like, the Bears could not get out of their own way. Justin Fields was taking sack after sack, extending the football. The defense just could not hold up one-on-one in coverage. And this was not a Packers team, by the way, that had Christian Watson, their number one receiver. It was Romeo Doubs. It was Jaden Reed, their rookie receiver. They were missing their number one. Everyone had to take a step backwards. Aaron Jones pulled his hamstring on his second touchdown of the game and had to go out for a stretch. Like this was not the top tier Packers team. And to me, it just told me that we're all excited to see Justin Fields break out with the Bears this year. This looked, if anything, even worse than the Justin Fields we saw last year. He really struggled in this game. So maybe you're optimistic about the Packers defense based on how they played, but it really felt like a game where the Bears were just overmatched. They were getting booed by their own fans before the end of week one.
I got hung up on the unintentional or intentional double entendre that you hit us with in there. I don't know. You said that Aaron Jones pulled his hamstring and he had to sit down, or he was out for a stretch, and it's like a stretch of time or a stretch of the hamstring. So it's obviously unintentional by the fact that your mouth is agape. Never mind. Charlie, you heard it right.
Is that a double entendre?
Yeah, it's a double entendre. Like a stretch of time or a stretch of the hamstring. It's definitely a double entendre, right?
An artist. An artist.
Anyway, I enjoyed that game. The playmakers that they did, everyone took a step back. The one thing that stands out in my mind from this game is something that you all probably didn't see or don't remember, is how Luke Musgrave, their tight end, was wide open and did.
You hated this.
Yes.
Oh, it made me so mad. It made me so mad. He was wide open and he caught the pass and he tried to turn around. It was like a long 40-yard potential touchdown play, and he pulled a Daniel Jones, and he just turned around and fell down before he got in end zone, and it upset me. I know football moves fast. I know it's hard, but he is someone who we consider a good athlete. Don't be looking like a tackle out there. Don't look like a tackle.
Like this really colors our perception of Luke Musgrave until he does something much cooler, right? Like that's like the initial memory.
It's like it's the perfect team because it's Christian Watson last year. You remember our first look at Christian Watson was like, oh, that bum can't catch, because he dropped a wide open touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers. Then by the end of the year, he's getting 3 touchdowns a game, and he's their number one receiver that we're surprised that they're productive with him on the sideline. It's crazy. So maybe Musgrave will bounce back for us.
Charlie, what are your thoughts on the Packers and Bears? Do you believe in the Packers? Are you on the Packers?
Well, the question I have is more about the Bears. And this is where I do believe in Christian Watson. He's, awesome. But even though he didn't play in that game. So the first episode we ever had of the Domonique Foxworth Show, we might have had like the show's first, like an only truly viral moment.
Just saying the Domonique Foxworth Show to me feels gross. Can you just say the show?
The first episode of our show.
There we go. I like that better.
You, Domonique Foxworth.
Get out of here, Snakeem.
Okay.
Inside joke.
You said that Justin Fields should demand a trade. Justin Fields turned out to be pretty good at football. He rushed for 1,100 yards, but today he was pressured on 42% of his dropbacks. He had a career low 4.1 air yards per attempt and only had 2 designed runs for -1 yards on those designed runs. A year later, do you still think he should demand a trade?
Absolutely. So, I mean, you put me in a tough spot with that. So it's hard to disentangle whether he's the problem or the situation's the problem, or they both can be the problem. What he did today, the pressures, you want to blame the offensive line, but I think Bill pointed out is something else that I also noticed, that he holds onto the ball for a while. So we're not talking about a pass rush win rate as much as we're talking about a guy who just doesn't want to take what's available and doesn't want to throw it away and wants to hold on to the ball, which I'm sure that number probably is elevated because of his athleticism. If you average it across, there are probably a couple times where it's 5 seconds back there just because he's an amazing athlete. But that does end up in sacks, and it does end up in fumbles, which he had today. So I guess the point that I would make is one that anyone who's listened to the show for a couple of weeks knows. The point that I always make about quarterbacks is that the situation really matters. And so if he is not going to be put in a situation where he can properly mature as a quarterback, then he's not going to succeed. And we can't pretend like what happened with Justin Fields in college did not exist. We can't pretend like he didn't land in an organization that had no idea what to do with him. And now we can look up at him and say that, yeah, he's not as developed a quarterback as we would want him to be. But who would develop in that? So maybe it's too late for him. Maybe he'll figure it out. But maybe he'll end up being an underachiever. But it's not all on him is the only point I want to make.
You had the right idea, but you had the wrong guy.
Okay.
If anybody should be requesting a trade, it's DJ Moore.
Let's go.
Goes from the Panthers. He has like tail end of Cam. He has Kyle Allen as his quarterback, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. He gets like PJ Walker in 3 straight seasons. Like he can't escape PJ Walker somehow. Finally, he gets traded. He goes to Chicago. Week 1, his quarterback's a mess. The offense is a mess. They're getting blown out. It's got to feel like deja vu, right?
2 targets.
One of them was a screen, and it didn't go for a touchdown like the one in the preseason. Yeah. That one in the preseason was sick. This one was not.
Yeah. I mean, everyone should be upset. Everyone should be disappointed. I think, as we all know, Ryan Poles, the GMs there, did not draft Justin Fields. So I would guess that he is probably anxious to make some other decisions, and he's probably planning for a transition to someone else. Is everybody just going to start tanking for Caleb? Is that oh my gosh, Caleb was so good.
Did you see Caleb?
He's so sick.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see it?
I mean,
wouldn't you?
I feel bad talking about anything but NFL on the first weekend of the NFL, but talking about Caleb is also NFL because projecting his impact on the league, there are few sure things in football, but 2 weeks in this season, and he looks like the best quarterback we've ever seen in college football. It's like ridiculous.
It's incredible.
It's the combination of all the things that a modern quarterback could have. Like he has the height, size, and pocket presence of your classic big white guy quarterback that 80-year-olds love, and he has the athleticism, off-platform throws of Patrick Mahomes, and all the things that modern football geniuses like myself and Bill Barnwell appreciate.
Just hit my mind as I was thinking about what I saw today, and you brought up Caleb, and I was thinking about the Cardinals. Make sure if you have the opportunity, you see the Cardinals game, check out the drawing the broadcast did of Joshua Dobbs. He should be allowed to sue the network for what they did to him in this drawing. It's so mean.
They do
fair.
I mean, they do show favorites. Like I feel like they make some guys look really handsome and jacked that aren't that big. Like I forgot who it was. It was a quarterback. It might have been Jimmy Garoppolo, where he had Jimmy Garoppolo's head, but he had J.J. Watt's body. I was like, why does he look like a superhero and everybody else looks like a normie?
Absolutely. Joshua Dobbs got a terrible edit. Unfair to Joshua Dobbs. He has it hard enough as is already. But you got to figure they already have Caleb drawn.
Oh, my gosh. I see the Josh Dobbs picture now. They put it into our group chat. It is, No,
it's just not nice.
Poor Arizona. Poor Josh Dobbs. Yeah, well, I don't know why we spend any time talking about that game because there's nothing relevant from that game. Maybe they'll turn it around. We'll figure it out at some point. We were supposed to at some point get over to our least impressive guys or people or players or teams of the weekend. Do you want to get there now, Charlie?
Sure.
I'll let you go first.
I kind of want to combine it together because it's also a most impressive for Bill Barnwell. My least impressive is a most impressive,
all right,
which is that all of the regression candidates that Bill Barnwell talked about, it turns out he was right and they actually all suck.
Oh, stop.
Don't
jinx me.
Vikings, Seahawks, I'm here to overreact. Those teams are hot garbage. Vikings, Seahawks, Giants.
He also said the Broncos would be better, and they lost to the Raiders, who are not good.
Russ looked nice though. Russ looked good. I promise. I watched. He looked passable. He was averaging like 5 yards an attempt, but besides that, he looked great.
I love that even the stat nerd is susceptible to confirmation bias, because that ain't nothing but confirmation bias. He looked okay. Russell looked okay. No, no. Also, Sean Payton starting the season with an onside kick. Masterful.
It was so nice. Like he would have gone totally untouched if he fielded it like a quarter of a second later.
Yeah, that was great.
It was so nice.
I really enjoyed it. We already talked about how bad Joe Burrow was in the Bengals and the Steelers. I feel like we covered all the worst things. We hit the Giants. There's really nothing worse than that this weekend. Was there anything worse than the teams that we talked about already?
I mean, the only one that's worth noting is Mina Kimes' favorite team, the Seahawks, because they lost to the Rams, who we also thought were in contention to be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes and might still be, despite the fact that Sean McVay is a great coach.
I think that I would like if there was ever a time where we did a NBA style frozen envelope lottery to make sure a player goes to the right city, like you guys think it was a coincidence that Wemby ended up in San Antonio? No. I want the NFL to engage in the same sort of tomfoolery and get my man Caleb to stay in LA with Sean McVay. Let's make it happen. I mean, you want him to go down there with Gannon in Arizona? Do not ruin that man. We deserve to see him in a good offense with a coach who knows what he is doing and knows how to develop a quarterback. The guy who took Jared Goff from the worst quarterback in the league to the Super Bowl. Damn it, get that man into Sean McVay's system, please.
You know how this ends up, Domonique.
How?
He ends up with the Falcons handing the ball off to Tyler Algier 15 times a game.
And not throwing it to Kyle Pitts ever.
And not throwing it to Kyle Pitts or Drake London ever.
So
ever.
How do you feel about Bijan? Because you are someone who is staunchly opposed to drafting running backs in the first round.
I hate all running backs. You know.
I know you do. But at least draft him in the first round. He did look amazing though. Like, I know you enjoy watching him play football, even though you wouldn't have drafted him in the first round. You had to really appreciate what Arthur Smith is doing with him down in Atlanta.
It really hurt because that incredible cut he had on that touchdown catch was against Frankie Louvu, who's like big football nerd Twitter guy, like Mina and Benjamin Solak. On Mina's podcast had like a long segment about how great he is and how like he's super underrated. Like, I feel like not only did Bijan Robinson prove me wrong in the first week of his NFL career, but like did it by like attacking someone I would have a poster of on my wall.
I like that.
Very upsetting.
He gave you a "Is this your king?" moment. All the nerds, "Is this your king?" He crossed him down to his knees, AI'd him like AI did Jordan, and then eluded two other nameless tacklers and went in the end zone. And it was incredible and impressive and outstanding. Nice. And it's worth a first-round pick. The Lions won, despite the fact that they got a inside linebacker and a running back. I feel like we are going back in time, guys. It's a hard-nosed football time. Let's get physical.
Let's just start drafting fullbacks in the first round again. We got away from. We didn't talk about the Seahawks. We just alluded to them briefly. Like this was a disaster against the Rams.
Hold on. This was, you're right. It was a disaster. But it was all encompassed by the moment when Aaron Donald was barreling down on to Geno Smith, and the boom mic caught Geno Smith in action say, "Oh my God," throw the ball away. Like, that is the microcosm for the whole game.
Domonique, neither Charlie or I have played football for a living. Is that kind of sheer panic on the field common?
I think so, across from Aaron Donald and a person like that. The most stressful things I had with football was never on the field. It was the night before games or the week of games, and I still sometimes wake up in cold sweats because I imagine that I might have to guard Tyreek Hill, and it stresses me out. I wish I was joking. This is a real thing. Like, I don't wake up in cold sweats, but sometimes you ever like wake up and be a little bit confused? Mm-hmm. Like, I've woken up before a little bit confused and feel like a intense bit of anxiety, and then the few seconds it takes me to realize, oh, you don't play anymore. Tyreek Hill's not your problem. Then I'm so relieved. It's like the best morning. It happens like twice a year where I have a nightmare about having to defend Tyreek Hill. And those are my favorite mornings. I'm like, oh, let me just get a cup of coffee and spend my day talking about people trying to figure out how to guard Tyreek Hill, not having to do that myself.
Let my ass just walk slow to the kitchen.
Oh,
that is the dream.
It's such a phenomenal feeling, just stirring my oatmeal in the morning like, that's somebody else's problem. Good luck to you, sir.
Should we get to Tyreek?
Sure.
I feel like we can get to Tyreek, but
All right.
we can't just get into the Tyreek Hill conversation. Like, there's a better way to do it.
And you know what time it is?
What time is it?
It's time for our Good Hands moment presented by Allstate.
Ooh.
Nailed it.
I was wondering if we'd ever get there.
In week 1, the Dolphins were in good hands because of Tyreek Hill's hands. Tyreek had 215 yards, which was more than all of the Chiefs receivers combined.
Tyreek Hill is incredible, man. Like, we have these conversations every so often about who's the best receiver in football. And Justin Jefferson, I think, is like the favorite now that people like to talk about as the best receiver in football. We've forgotten how impactful Tyreek Hill is and what Tyreek has done to that thing. So that team and that player. We talk a lot about how Mike McDaniel brought out the best in Tua. I'm not so sure that it's not just Tyreek Hill, because if we talk about all the quarterbacks that made those incredible jumps, the reason why they made those jumps was because they got a receiver that made things so much easier for them. So you can look at A.J. Brown for Hurts. You can look at Stephon Diggs for Josh Allen. And I think Tyreek Hill's done the same thing for Tua. And it doesn't mean that these players aren't good, but having a player like that really can unlock a quarterback and unlock a team. I think he is by far the most valuable player on their team, and the impact that he's had on that team is incredible.
I want to lay out the scenario the Chargers faced in this game, Dominique. Oh. J.C. Jackson was coming back from a torn patellar tendon. This was his first game since suffering that injury last year. He ended up one-on-one against Tyreek Hill on multiple occasions in this game. He had an interception, so he did make a play. I think that was against Jalen Waddle in coverage, though. He also became the first player, I think, in the history of National Football League to commit pass interference on a Hail Mary in this game. Like, the incredible ups and downs. And I think, like, you wouldn't want to cover Tyreek Hill healthy. You wouldn't want to cover him fresh. Like, if you're coming back from an injury your first game, you want to at least maybe ease your way, maybe play 20 snaps, maybe, you're going to cover River Craycraft in this game. You're not going to cover Tyreek Hill.
Craycraft.
I can't believe there were so many snaps with J.C. Jackson covering Tyreek Hill, including the game winner.
J.C. Jackson is a Terp, so I refuse to allow any more negative talk about JC. Well, you actually provided a good excuse for JC, so I'm down with that. But he had a rough year last year before he tore his patella, and it just hit me while we're sitting here. Wasn't the Chargers were the team that were like, we figured it out. We're going to get up and jam them. That's the solution.
Yeah, that lasted one game. They were going to jam them, and they played like inside leverage. Even when typically middle of field's closed, you want to play with outside leverage. They played inside leverage. It turns out that works for like one game. Once the Dolphins had a solution for that, it didn't work. And Tua and Tyreek ate them up throughout this entire contest.
Yeah, how good do you think Tua is? We were having this conversation in the green room a little bit earlier, and I think he's up there pretty high. Whether it's Mike McDaniel's helping or Tyreek being there, I think there's a top tier, and then there's another tier of quarterbacks, and I'm not so sure that Tua's not the thing that's separating him from getting up there is just longevity and health, obviously.
Okay, so we talked about Brock Purdy earlier on in this show, and Charlie, I want to make clear this is not disparaging Brock Purdy. Do not put this on his whiteboard for next week. Do not call me out. I'm just saying Brock Purdy has incredible players around him. We can all agree. Brock Purdy ain't going for 460 and doesn't make it feel like it's an easy 460.
Not yet, at least.
And yet Tua did in this game, not the first time he's top 400, not the first time he's won a shootout like this against a franchise quarterback on the other side of the field. And it felt like he left some meat on the bone. It felt like he actually kind of had like a B day as opposed to like an A- or even an A+ day, and he still got to 460. I think that doesn't happen if you're just a system quarterback. It doesn't happen if you're just getting help from Tyreek Hill and Mike McDaniel. You have to be contributing to that, and I think Tua had some incredible throws in this game on third down.
I'm glad to hear that you're on my side. And what would have taken him from this outstanding B performance to an A performance is don't throw jump balls to Braxton Berrios in the slot and get interceptions. So he made some questionable decisions, but when the accuracy that he has and the decision making, whether it's because the plays are schemed up in such a way that the decision making is easy, or when the decision is throw to Tyreek Hill or don't throw to Tyreek Hill, then the decision making is pretty easy then too. No matter what the decision making is, he consistently makes good decisions, and then he puts the ball exactly where it needs to be regularly. And I think that's the difference. The accuracy is kind of his superpower if there was one thing. And this is one of the teams that felt like it lived up to the hype. And even though the defense gave up a lot of points, they made plays at the end of the game in big situations. And I guess I'm flip-flopping a little bit because you have to give Vic Fangio a little credit calling those blitzes at the end of the game. That's like back-to-back blitzes. It's definitely not about the X's and O's.
You know what's great? Vic Fangio's defense got ripped up for that entire game.
Yep.
Justin Herbert, they marched up and down the field. They were running left and right. They whatever they wanted. But those final two plays, Vic Fangio got a couple sacks, and they're cutting to him in the booth, and he's like, just scratching his head like, oh, I'm a genius. Like, the defense was terrible for most of this game. They made two plays at the end, but they needed Tua and Tyreek to ball out to give them a hope of winning this game.
That's called game management. Vic knew he didn't have to. He was like, I'm going to
save them. Save my money plays.
I got 2 money plays, and I know when I'm going to use them. I'm going to use them at the end of the game. And they worked back-to-back sacks, and they were unblocked both times. And I'm sure Cowboys fans do not miss Kellen Moore at this moment, considering what they're watching take place at this moment and what happened. Did Kellen Moore catch Charger? Is that what happened? Did he just catch the Charger? Because that's like a vintage Charger game, right? You're into the game, you're down by 2 points, and you're about to come up short before 60 minutes comes on the East Coast.
You know what happened? I feel like the Dolphins missed that extra point to not make it a 3-point game, and the Chargers got confused. They're like, that's our move. like you can't do that to us. Like, we're the ones who missed that extra point, and then you march down the field for a game-winning field goal. I think they saw themselves in the mirror and got shocked a little bit.
Let's not forget they really did Charger because they lost by 2, but they gave up a field goal at the end of the half because of a PI on a Hail Mary. That is all-time Chargering.
On a Hail Mary that was thrown 25 yards short of the end zone.
Oh gosh, that's not
Just
good.
like,
It's a fun weekend though.
I mean, I blame the refs. I don't blame J.C. Jackson because, like, if you're a cornerback, you should be allowed to get away with whatever you want on a Hail Mary, knowing you're not going to get a PI call.
I mean, the offense is allowed to get away with whatever they want and all plays all the time. But I had another theory that I was going to share with you, but Charlie said I couldn't, so I'll share it with you off mic about modern pass rushers and Ronald Reagan.
I never said you couldn't share that, but please don't.
No, I don't want to share. That's why I blamed you. But it's a great theory. I'll tell you when we're done with this show.
Let's finish the All-State section of the show before we get into Domonique's theory section.
We already finished the All-State section of the show. It was about Tyreek Hill. We just nailed it. Well, I guess the whole show is the All-State section of the show. Yeah, we're sponsored by Allstate. Every minute of this is Allstate. We are in good hands. They don't feel like they're in good hands if I tell them my pass rush theories.
Yep, we'll just bleep all that. All right, guys.
It's no fun. It's no fun.
Choking. Literally choking. All right, last one. None of the rookie quarterbacks look like busts. I'm talking Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. That is a positive. Like, none of them walked out and clearly couldn't play. But you guys, football nerds, who was the most impressive rookie quarterback in your eyes?
Anthony Richardson. I think it's easy.
Anthony Richardson.
Yeah. Why, Bill?
He looked like he belonged. It looked like he was part of a coherent, functional offense. Wasn't perfect. He didn't make perfect throws. Threw a bad interception. They were a little sloppy here and there. But remember, this was a guy who, during the preseason, when he went like 6 for 17, people were just like, oh, this guy's a high school quarterback. He's the next Trey Lance. Doesn't know how to play quarterback. He looked fine. Jaguars' defense is okay. Not great, but they're a playoff caliber defense. And he looked totally fine. as part of the offense, functional quarterback run concepts, as a passer, ball was out on time. He's obviously got incredible arm strength. It felt like this offense is going to work week after week. It doesn't mean they're going to win a ton of games. He's going to make mistakes, but it wasn't like he felt like he was unplayable. And I think that was the perception from him after what we saw from him in the preseason.
Yeah, I think the expectations were, the possibilities were much more vast for Anthony Richardson. Like, I think there were, I would have believed you if you said Anthony Richardson came out and had a Cam Newton type introduction to the league where he just threw for a bunch and ran for a bunch. Like, I thought that was a possibility. And he completely fall on his face. I also thought that was a possibility. I didn't think that for Bryce Young. Like, I thought Bryce Young was going to be somewhere in the middle. I didn't think he had some super high ceiling on week one or a super low floor. I was surprised by how often he got confused by, I guess it was 2 different times he seemed to be confused by what looked like a bit of a quarter half coverage that the quarter player came over and helped some. At least on the first interception, like that surprised me. But I think C.J. Stroud, I thought he was going to get demolished, and he hung in there. Like, he's a competent quarterback, and that's something to build on. And I think all these teams should feel encouraged about what they saw from their rookie quarterbacks in week one.
I agree. There was no disaster. It wasn't like, Jameis throwing a pick 6 on his first pass. It wasn't like, it looked like they were going to get themselves injured by week 3. Like, they all felt like they belonged. And that's a really good sign for week 1 because they should get better, hopefully, as the year goes along.
I'm pretty sure Anthony Richardson should have been the first pick.
You're already there. You said it before the draft.
Yeah.
You convinced me also before the draft. It was not just Anthony Richardson should be the first pick. At least it was Anthony Richardson's going to have the best rookie season because of Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson being together, like a match made in heaven. Shane Steichen coming from the Eagles, bringing the Jalen Hurts offense over without the Jalen Hurts weapons or offensive line.
Well, it's also, we thought that he wasn't the first pick because he had the highest chance of sucking. We now know he doesn't suck, and it's not like he's thrown to Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce, and he was, relatively competent in his first game. I've seen enough.
I don't know if we know he doesn't suck, but at least it was
we think he
promising
doesn't
enough.
suck.
We didn't talk about the Eagles at all, and the Eagles did not play well against the Patriots. They almost lost that game twice.
Some really questionable decisions, and it's like the funny thing is they get a pass because they had such an impressive year last year. If they were one of these other teams that we haven't seen make big time plays in big situations and play well enough to win the Super Bowl, I think I'd be a lot more concerned about the Eagles in this situation. But I don't know. I have confidence in them figuring it out, and I also walked away from that game thinking, before the season started, I laughed at people who said Bill Belichick a hot seat conversation, but he's not making the decisions that I think are most advantageous for the success of this team. There was a time when you always knew that Bill Belichick was going to make all the right moves when it comes to special teams decisions and clock management. It doesn't feel like that, and it goes all the way back to when they have players laddering the ball at the end of the game when the score is tied. It's like that feels so un-Belichickian, and then that carries over into this season where they aren't optimizing their players. On the offensive side of the ball, at least. Defense is great because they're always great.
Defense still looked nice, though. That's Bill Belichick's side of the football.
That's fair. And Gonzalez is impressive. I like him.
Yeah, he was good. Anyone else? Is there a single game we did not mention?
We didn't talk about Baker Mayfield.
Yep. It's on at the exact same time.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we got to talk about the great Bake.
The Baker-sance.
He is back. They're Super Bowl contenders now because Baker Mayfield is the former number 1 overall pick. Baker Mayfield has finally found his situation with top-level receivers, good offensive line play, and barely pulled out a win over the Vikings. And poor Justin Jefferson looked like he wanted to fight everybody on his team. Yeah, I don't know. There's not much to say. I don't actually think that no one expected the Vikings to be really good, and I'm not sure that this is a sign that the Bucs are going to be a legitimate contender. I guess they do have a chance to win that division because the division's not special, but
stinky.
Yeah, they're not going to win the Super Bowl.
It does feel bad that the Vikings already ripped the close game Band-Aid off. Like, even that little dream of like, yeah, we figured something out. We got a secret that no one else knows. No, got to week one, and they already lost a close game.
I was thinking about you as that game was finishing up. It was like you, as people don't know, Bill writes a column every year about the teams who may regress in part because they overperformed in one possession games, and the Vikings were the poster children for the overperformance in one possession games. Or it wasn't even one possession games. It was like they were. What was the stat for them last year that was really, if you remember, that was really impressive in their close game stats?
They were 9-0 in games decided by 7 points or less.
Yeah. So when they blew this one, that was a one possession game. I just imagine that you were home smiling. Do you feel good about it?
No, because like it feels like everyone already knows it. Like there's no point. Like there's no like saying the Steelers are going to regress. People get mad at because there's actually like you can make a case that the Steelers are going to be good or be better than they were a year ago. With the Vikings, who am I convincing that the Vikings aren't going to be as good as they were last year? I think the Vikings know they're not going to be as good as they were last year in close games. So it just feels like, the bandwagon's too full. I'm already jumping off the bandwagon as this football hipster I am.
It's 40-0 in the Cowboys Giants game.
Oh no!
I love it. Well, the Cowboys
Literally, there's no score you could tell me that I wouldn't believe. If you were like, it's 72-0, I'd be like, yeah, they probably got a couple pick sixes. Cooper Rush came in and threw a couple touchdown passes. Like, I'd buy it.
All right, last question before we get out of here. First of all, thank you, Bill, for doing this with us. Thank you, Allstate, for presenting this. Thank you, Charlie, for being here. Thank you, Podville. And thank you to all of our other producers, Kevin, Brian, Serafina, and Ethan. Last question for you, Bill. Of all the books behind you, how many have you read?
The sports ones, like 100%.
Oh.
The not sports ones, you're batting like 333, I would say. I probably opened like half of them, but I wouldn't say I finished them all.
Yeah, good. That makes me feel better about my nerd card. I don't have to turn it in because I buy a lot of books. I start a lot of books. Don't finish a whole lot of books.
Oh, yeah. Everyone does that.
No.
Oh, good.
That's just contributing to the culture. It's just buying a bunch of books.
Thanks for watching the Domonique Foxworth Show presented by Allstate.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.